Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet. Om. Dear friends, we are now starting this Mahabharata. Yesterday I gave you a small introduction, and today what I will do is I will just tell the story in brief, because this Mahabharata, as I was saying, is a very huge text. A very huge text. In fact, one point which I missed telling was that this Mahabharata is divided into 18 sections. This 18, not 18 chapters, 18 sections, 18 books we can say. And each book is called a parva. Parva, it is called a parva. Of course, that is a name given by the writer. Somehow he was fascinated by that name, because parva actually means, if you have seen a sugar cane, so a long sugar cane which grows from, it grows like a huge stalk, like you must have seen a maize stalk, somewhat like a maize stalk it grows, and then from that sugar cane only this sugar cane juice and the sugar they are manufactured. So that sugar cane, if you take the long sugar cane, it is divided into so many sections. So each section is called a parva, and in each section you get the juice of the sugar cane. So these 18 sections of these 18 parvas or 18 sections, so each section or each parva is so juicy. So that is the idea of the writer. And some of these sections are quite huge and some are very small. For example, Adi Parva is quite big. Then Udyoga Parva again is very big. Shanti Parva is very, very big. Vana Parva also is very big. So there are certain parvas, there are certain chapters which are not chapters, there are certain sections which are very, very big. You can call them book 1, book 2, book 3, etc. up to book 18. So there are certain books which are quite big, having maybe hundreds of chapters, and there are some books which are having small number of chapters. So it is like that, the structure is like that. And here the story is, if I want to get into the story is, first of all, we have to see that, we have to remember that this is a story which happened about 5,000 years ago. I was telling you there was what was called a Dwapara Yuga, and Krishna's death, Lord Krishna's death marked the beginning of what is called Kali Yuga, in which we are in. So this Kali Yuga started about 5,000 odd years, I don't exactly remember the number of years. So this story is that old. And we know that there used to be so many dynasties in olden days. For example, Ramayana, when we studied Ramayana, we saw that Rama belonged to that solar dynasty. In that solar dynasty, there was a very eminent man called Ikshvaku. It was also called Ikshvaku Vamsha, that is Ikshvaku dynasty. So similarly here, we have got one very great person called Bharata. In fact, the name of India, another name for India is Bharat. India, that is Bharat. That is what our constitution also says. So Bharata, the word Bharata comes from the name called Bharata, who was a very distinguished ruler. And starting from that, we see that there are people like Kuru. It is also called Kuru Vamsha. Not only called Bharata dynasty, it is also called Kuru dynasty. From that word Kuru only, the name Kaurava comes. From that name Kuru, the word Kaurava comes. Kaurava is something relating to Kuru is called Kaurava. So technically, we have to remember that even Pandavas, they are also Kauravas. Even Pandavas, they also belong to the same race. They also belong to the same dynasty. They are descendants of the same dynasty. And here, of course, we call Pandavas separately and Kauravas separately. That has become just a sort of convention, a sort of convention by various writers that there are what is called Pandava as one group and Kaurava as another group, and the mighty war takes place between these two groups. Pandavas, they gather a huge army, and Kauravas also, they gather a huge army, and there is a big war between these two armies. And in this huge war, many people die, and almost everybody from the Kaurava side, they die, and only very few people remain on the side of Pandavas, and this Pandava chief, he becomes the emperor at the end of the war. So that is the overall story in one or two lines. But if I want to tell the story in brief, I have to start with say one point, that is, this book, it deals with the story of 6 generations. 6 generations actually. So right now, for the purpose of summary, I will take the middle 2 generations. The middle 2 generations. Top 2 I am leaving, down 2 I am leaving. And the middle 2 I will take for explaining the story. So the middle 2, in that middle 2, the first generation is, there are 2 brothers called Dhritarashtra and Panduraja. And the name Dhritarashtra is rather difficult to pronounce for modern students. Many modern students, particularly those who have grown abroad, they may find it very difficult to pronounce the name Dhritarashtra. So Dhritarashtra and Panduraja. So these 2 are brothers. Dhritarashtra is the elder brother and Panduraja is the younger brother. And Dhritarashtra is a blind man. And we see that this blindness is not only physical blindness, but even metaphorically. Probably the poet or the writer, Vyasa, sage Vyasa, intended that this gentleman, though he knew dharma, though he knew what was right, what was wrong, but still he was blind to so many things which his son was doing. So he was blindly approving all actions which was all illegal, irregular, unrighteous actions which were being done by his sons. So that is how we see that the character of Dhritarashtra is not only physically blind, but figuratively also blind. And his younger brother Panduraja is a gentleman, and that Panduraja, he is almost the de facto the king, because he is the man who is controlling all these enemies. He is the person who is actually ruling the kingdom every day in the name of his elder brother, and he is a very obedient brother. He is reporting to his brother every day, and a very obedient brother. There is absolutely nothing against Panduraja. And when this was so, it so happens that Panduraja gets some curse. We will see the details of that curse later. And in that curse, before getting that curse, actually Panduraja has got 5 sons. Panduraja has 5 sons. They are called Pandavas. From the name Pandu, Pandu's sons are called Pandavas. Dhritarashtra's sons are called Dhartarashtras. It is much more difficult name, but a simpler term is Kauravas. Maybe that may be the reason why they are called Kauravas. Because every time if we want to say Dhartarashtra, it is so painful. So even for the writer. So probably he thought Kaurava is a more manageable name. So Kaurava is the name for these sons of Dhritarashtra. And though Pandavas, the Pandu sons are also from the same Kuru dynasty, they are called Pandavas just for the sake of convenience. There is nothing more than that. So these Pandavas, they are 5 in number, and Dhritarashtra's children, that is Kauravas, they are 100 in number. And don't ask me, don't say that Dhritarashtra was having some 20 wives and from each wife he has got so many sons, etc. Not like that. It is only from one wife. It so happens that she delivers a huge egg, and that huge egg, actually what happens was, Panduraja's wife, she delivers the baby first, and out of envy, oh, that lady has delivered the baby first and that boy will be the next king, because the law of primogeniture is there. Whoever is first born, he becomes the king, and already Panduraja was the Yuvaraja, and that man's son also, if he is the elder one, he becomes the Yuvaraja. Though this lady, Dhritarashtra's wife, out of rather disgust, when she bore that womb for a long time, and then in disgust she bet that womb, and that from that womb a huge egg came out. And then one sage Vyasa, we will see the same sage, the same writer. I told you yesterday that sage Vyasa is not only the writer, but he is also a participant. He comes now and then, he intervenes, and then he guides people, you do this, etc. He saves certain situations. So sage Vyasa comes, and then that egg was broken into 100, that actually it got broken into 100 pieces. And when it got broken, and those pieces he put them in pots, and then you can call them incubators nowadays. I don't want to say that, I don't mean to say that they knew that incubation technology by that time. I don't mean to say that, but that is the story. Let us take the story as it is. So they put in some ghee pots, and then they grew those embryos, and then those embryos became boys, 100 boys and 1 girl, of course. Then what happens was that among these 100 people, The elder one, the eldest one was called Duryodhana. He is the bad guy in the whole story. He is the bad guy. Pandavas, they are the good guys, and the entire lot of these Kauravas, they are the bad guys. So that is what we are going to see. Then what happens was, this Pandu Raja, he goes to the forest once for hunting. In those days, people used to hunt. Kings, it was the duty of the kings also, duty of the kings to hunt and kill animals, because everywhere, the moment you step out of your town, step out of your village or town, there was a huge jungle and all the forest animals used to come in. So it was the duty of the king to take some army and to take some people, trained soldiers, and then used to hunt. And it was also a good practice for facing the enemies, because you have to hit you have to hit a moving target. We saw it in Ramayana also. So hitting a moving target, for that the practice is to hunt animals. So they used to hunt. So one day it so happened that he killed one saint, one sage, let me say. That sage was actually making love to his wife. So that sage gave a curse to this Pandu Raja, and then this Pandu Raja dies. So after Pandu Raja dies, then Pandavas are there, remaining only their mother is there, and the 5 brothers, along with these 100 children, they are all brought up by Dhritarashtra only, under the care of Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra has got an uncle named Bhishma. And in fact, Bhishma's story is quite big. We'll get into that story later. Right now, in this summary, I am not going into the story of Bhishma, because Bhishma is again one of the greatest characters of all times, let me say. Not only in Mahabharata, one of the greatest characters of all times. So that Bhishma, he is the uncle of Dhritarashtra. So which means for the Pandavas and the Kauravas, he is the grandfather. For the Pandavas and the Kauravas, this Bhishma is the grandfather. And that Bhishma was himself a very great warrior. And Bhishma brings up all these people. Bhishma trains all these people. Bhishma is the person who is literally taking care of all these 105 people, plus maybe some other royal personalities. So this 100 sons of Dhritarashtra and the 5 sons of Pandu Raja, these 5 orphaned sons, not totally orphaned, their mother of course is there. So this 105, so this Bhishma engages very great expert teachers. And they are Dronacharya and Krupacharya. They were very unbeatable warriors. Dronacharya was a man, he knew all the divine weapons. In those days, they were not only having some physical weapons, worldly weapons, they were also having some divine weapons. We will see all those divine weapons, etc., how they work and all that. Nowadays, we don't have those divine weapons. So those divine weapons, all the secrets of the divine weapons he knew, and similarly that other Krupacharya also. So they trained both the Pandavas and Kauravas. And among all the trainees, the one person from the Pandava side, these Pandavas are 5, I told you. Among these 5 people, the eldest one is Dharmaraja, second one is Bhima, the strongest man. We know the story, if you have seen Amar Chitra Katha or some books like that, you know that Bhima is the strongest man, physically strong. And the third one is Arjuna. Arjuna is also strong, but he is highly skilled in archery. And he was the greatest archer, it seems. He was the greatest archer, like Lord Rama in Ramayana. He was one very great archer. And the next 2 are younger brothers. They are also great warriors, but they are not as prominent as Arjuna. So this Arjuna excelled in that archery. And Bhima excelled in the physical fight, that is not only physical fight, but also fighting with huge maces. In those days, they used to have some huge iron mace, and with that iron mace, they used to fight, they used to hit each other. So on the Kaurava side, the first one among the Kauravas, that is Duryodhana. He was also a great warrior, great fighter. Bhima and Duryodhana, they are almost equal. Though Bhima is stronger in physical strength, Duryodhana is a person who trained more. Bhima is physically strong, but Duryodhana is a person well trained, better trained. So they were almost equally matched. So it was like that. And so at the end of all that training, of course, not only physical training. In those days, we have to know that these kings, they used to have a big syllabus. There is an indoor syllabus and there is an outdoor syllabus. That indoor syllabus was, for example, logic. A king was supposed to know logic, whether a person who is coming to him is speaking to him logically or not, whether the person is trying to make some incorrect inferences and he is thrusting those inferences on you. A king is supposed to know if the other man is leading the king into the wrong arguments, wrong conclusions. Similarly, the king was supposed to know the Vedas, because the Vedas, they tell what is right and what is wrong. They tell not only about the God, they also tell about the worldly behavior. So that dharma, for that dharma, he was supposed to know the Vedas. Then they were also supposed to know trade and commerce. And they were also supposed to know what is called jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is not only civil jurisprudence, but criminal jurisprudence. How to punish the wrongdoers and how to maintain order in society. So all those things, they were taught in all those things. And in addition to that, this outdoor, that is fighting on horseback, fighting on elephant back, and fighting on a chariot, and fighting with a sword, and again with bow and arrow, and so many weapons, fighting with several weapons, so all these things. So they were all well trained. And at the end of the training, usually there is a temptation on the part of the trainers or teachers to give some sort of demo. So there is a huge amphitheater, like we see in the Roman movies. In the Roman movies, we see a huge amphitheater, and all those gladiators, they come and then they do fight. So like that, here is a scene of gladiators. So these are the people, they come and demonstrate their strength, and all the people, they come, they show their great skills. And in that, Arjuna excelled. Initially, there was a fight between Bhima and Duryodhana. I told you that Bhima and Duryodhana were almost equally matched. Bhima was physically very strong, and Duryodhana was better trained. Every time he was undergoing training, because he was having that in mind. At some point of time later, I have to fight this Bhima. So he was having terrific training. So these two people, there was such a big duel between them, that the umpires had to come and then pull them back. Because had they not pulled them back, they were about to kill, because they were fighting with all hatred and enmity. By that time, in fact, hatred was also already there in the minds of Bhima and Duryodhana, because Duryodhana had several times tried to kill Bhima by poisoning and by so many ways. So many ways he tried to kill Bhima, but luckily Bhima escaped at all times. Then, when the umpires, they pulled back, the next show was that of Arjuna. Arjuna, I told you, is a great archer. Arjuna came and then he shot arrows, and then there were peculiar machines which were improvised at that place. For example, the hollow of a horn, bull's horn. Suppose you take a bull's horn, and there is a hollow of that horn, and that horn is making a round. And this archer, he has to shoot arrows into that hole, into that moving thing. So into that moving thing, he has to shoot arrows. So like that, Arjuna showed his skill, and everybody was stunned, everybody was perplexed, everybody started praising, and all the people, they started saying bravo and whatnot. And meanwhile, one unknown person, totally unknown person, he just came, he just walked in. He was also as mighty, as good looking as Arjuna, as stunningly impressive as Arjuna. And he came and said, yes, I'll show all these skills which Arjuna has showed. And he also showed all those skills. Then everybody was so perplexed. Then what happens? This Duryodhana, who already had so much of hatred for these Pandavas, he immediately picked up that particular stranger. And that stranger's name is Karna. His name is Karna. He is also a very mighty character in Mahabharata. So this Duryodhana immediately befriended him, because he said, yes, you are my friend. All the time he was always afraid of Arjuna, because if in case of any war, there is nobody on Kaurava side who would be equal to Arjuna. So now he has got somebody who is equal to Arjuna and who is also challenging Arjuna. So he wanted that spirit. He immediately became a good friend, and then he gave some portion of the kingdom and whatnot. So he made him a king. And from then, that was the point when the enmity between these two groups got crystallized. So that is what we have to see, that demonstration of skills, etc., that was the point when this enmity got crystallized. And thereafter, what happens was, this Dhritarashtra, that blind king, he sees, he also knows what is all happening. So he feels that it is safer for these Pandavas. Not only he feels, he also has some bad idea also with that, some bad intention on the advice of his son Duryodhana. He sends Dharmaraja, these Pandavas, he sends Pandavas to one place called Varanavatam. You please go and stay there, because here it seems you are having some friction with these guys, and my sons are not very good people, you please go and stay there. So, okay, Dharmaraja, he is a very, very obedient son, like Rama in Ramayana. Dharmaraja also, he is a very, very obedient son. He obeys Dhritarashtra, his father's elder brother. This Pandava's father was Panduraja, as I said. Panduraja's elder brother is Dhritarashtra. And this Dharmaraja obeyed, and then he went. And when they were going, there is a very wise king, wise minister to Dhritarashtra, the blind king. The blind king has got a very wise and also righteous, very upright, righteous minister called Vidura. That Vidura, he hints to Dharmaraja, he hints to this Pandava chief, be careful there, there is some plot. That house, he speaks in a strange language, which only that Dharmaraja knows. Vidura and Dharmaraja, they speak in what is called a Mlechya Bhasha. So there, in fact, we will see that probably at that time, our people, our Indians, they had some contact with maybe Greeks or some such people. It could be Greek or some other language. It is a Mlechya Bhasha, not exactly Sanskrit, it is some other Bhasha. And in that Bhasha, he communicated to Dharmaraja, saying that you be careful, and that house is something which is so inflammable and it can be set on fire easily. So then Dharmaraja knows, and then he also inspects that house, and he sees that it is made of highly inflammable material, and suddenly if some small fire is put, the entire building will be in flames within a few minutes, and the people are there, they don't even have a chance to escape. So what does he say? What does he do? So Bhima, we know that Bhima is a very strong man, and this Vidura also sends a person who was an expert in digging tunnels. In those days, one best way to escape from the enemy was to build a tunnel and escape into the forest. If the enemy occupied your place, then one easy way to escape into the forest through some tunnel. So they used to dig long tunnels. In fact, even during the Second World War, if you see in London also they had got some tunnels that not to escape like that, they are underground bunkers to escape from the bomb attacks. So similarly, our people also, they had 5,000 years ago, we had these tunnels. So this man, there was a trained tunnel digger. So that man comes and digs a tunnel into the forest, which opens into the forest, deep forest. So that is how these people, on one day, the house is set on fire. These people, they pretend as though, when some people were also there in the house. And the Pandavas, they pretended as though, because they knew that Duryodhana was planning to set fire to the house on a particular day. So just on that day or prior to that, these people, they just set it on fire. And the fellow who came to set it on fire, he himself gets burnt. A person who was sent and then who was sent to set fire to the house, he himself gets burnt along with some other people. And the Pandavas, they escape through the tunnel. Their mother also is there. Five brothers and their widowed mother. So all the people, they escape into the tunnel, and there escape through the tunnel, and there they go to, there is a small episode there where Bhima has a fight with one demon called Hidimbasura, and that Hidimbasura dies, and then Bhima marries that Hidimbasura's sister, because that's Hidimbasura's sister, her name is Hidimba. He falls in love with this Bhima. And that was the reason for killing that demon also. So, because that Hidimba married that Bhima, and they got a son called Ghatotkacha, who would be one great warrior in that Mahabharata war also. We'll see that. Then, after that, these 5 brothers and also the mother, they have to stay almost underground, let us say, a sort of underground existence, underground in the sense not known to anybody. They are in disguise, they are in the guise of Brahmanas, and they go to a town called Ekachakrapuram. So there in that town they stay for a couple of years in the house of one Brahmana. And in those days the Brahmanas, they used to live by bhikshatanam, they used to live by begging. So they used to go, and then they used to go to some houses and then get some food, get some pulses, grains, etc. And then they used to come home and then they used to cook and eat. So that was the time. That was the way in which Brahmanas lived in olden days, because the Brahmana was not supposed to accumulate wealth in olden days. That is the reason why we see in Gita also. In the Gita, what happens? Arjuna says, no, I will not do this war. I will as well live like a Brahmin. I will live by bhikshatanam, he says. So that is what we see in that Bhaitshacharyam, something he says. So like that, these people, they lived that sort of life. And at that time, there is also an interesting episode where Bhima kills one demon who was actually fleecing that entire city. That particular town, Ekachakrapuram, was under the influence of one bad guy called Bakasura. And this Bhima fights with him and then kills that Bakasura. And thereafter, while they were still leading that such underground life, they come to know of what was called Swayamvara of Draupadi. There was a king called Drupada, and that Drupada, he has some enmity with this one person called Dronacharya. In fact, I told you about Dronacharya and Krupacharya, who were the trainers for these Pandavas and Kauravas. These trainers for Pandavas and Kauravas, they were two Brahmins actually, Dronacharya and Bhishmacharya, this Krupacharya. In those days, Brahmins, they knew all this warfare also. Brahmins, some of them, not all. Some people who lived in a very meek manner, they also were like that. And some people, they were also eminent weapon makers, like sage Bharadwaja, etc. They were great warriors, mighty fighters. So these people, Pandavas, they heard that there was one Swayamvara which was announced by a king named Drupada. So this Swayamvara thing, I'll tell you tomorrow, we'll get into that tomorrow. Because the story in brief itself is going beyond one episode. So because the story is so, the book is so huge. So maybe tomorrow also we will see this story in brief. Now we will stop today. Harihi Om Tat Sat.